What happens when you put school property taxes on, like permanent autopilot, in a state where 8th grade math and reading scores currently rank 48th in the country?
Well, you end up with a pretty profound structural disconnect. A disconnect between the amount of money taxpayers are forced to provide and the actual quality of the public service being delivered to the community.
Right. Welcome to today's Deep Dive. I am your host, and we are thrilled you are here because that striking question is our exact mission today.
I'm here as your resident policy expert, ready to dig into the mechanics of all this.
And we really need to dig in because we're unpacking a piece of legislation that threatens to fundamentally alter the financial machinery of an entire state. The legislation is Delaware's Senate Bill 322, or SB 322.
Yeah, and to help us navigate this, we are drawing insights from a detailed analysis by Charlie Copeland.
Right, he's the director of the Center for Economic and Fiscal Policy at the Caesar Rodney Institute. That's a public policy think tank. And he also brings the perspective of a former Delaware state senator and Senate minority leader.
Which is incredibly useful here. Having a source who has actually been inside the legislative sausage-making process, we aren't just looking at the stated intent of a bill.
Exactly. We are analyzing the real-world operational impact of its legal text. But before we go a single step further, I need to do a strict neutrality check for you listening.
Always important.
Definitely. This deep dive touches on public schools, property taxes, and government authority. We know people are incredibly passionate about these issues, so I want to explicitly state that we are not taking a political side here.
Right. We are not endorsing the viewpoints presented in the source material, and we aren't criticizing them either.
Yep. Our goal today is strictly to neutrally impart the arguments and the data laid out in Charlie Copeland's analysis so you can fully grasp the mechanics of this ongoing debate.
We'll break down the how and the why of the arguments and leave the ultimate decision of who is right entirely up to you.
Okay, so let's start with the current system. Because before we can debate whether SB 322 is a brilliant fix or a terrible mistake, we really need to understand the financial machinery it is trying to replace.
Makes sense. Currently, there is a mechanism in place called a 10% post-reassessment tax increase cap.
Wait, let me take a step back and admit some confusion here. Why is there a post-reassessment cap to begin with? Does a county just, arbitrarily decide houses are worth more one year and send everyone a massive spiked tax bill?
I mean, it definitely feels arbitrary when it happens, but the mechanism is actually pretty straightforward. Property taxes are based on the assessed value of your home, right?
Right.
Over time, sometimes over decades, real estate values naturally rise. When a county finally updates those property values to reflect current market realities, that's what a reassessment is. The baseline value of everyone's home jumps significantly.
So if the tax rate stays exactly the same, your actual tax bill would skyrocket overnight.
Right.
Simply because your house is suddenly worth more on paper. So it's like a house assessed at $200,000 jumps to $400,000, and your tax bill just doubles, even though your income hasn't changed at all.
That is the exact scenario these caps are designed to prevent. Historically, to protect homeowners from that kind of sudden financial shock, state law imposes a cap.
Got it.
It basically says, even if property values double, the school district cannot use that reassessment to increase its total tax revenue by more than 10% without going to the voters.
Okay, that makes perfect sense as a safeguard. But SB 322 comes in and essentially shreds that old rule book.
It really does. It replaces that 10% cap with a brand new formula based on districts' prior year operating revenues and the average growth rate of taxable property.
And inside that new formula is the provision that completely rewrites the power dynamic between the government and the taxpayer.
Right. The bill allows school districts to raise school property taxes by up to 2% annually, completely bypassing a voter referendum.
Which is huge. Traditionally, if a school district wants more funding from property taxes beyond normal baseline growth, they have to run a campaign. They have to go to the voters, explain what the money is for, and ask for permission.
And the voters either approve it or reject it.
Right. But SB 322 takes that direct democratic feedback loop and throws it out the window for these 2% annual hikes.
And, 2% might sound incredibly modest on a year-to-year basis.
Well, wait, isn't the 2% essentially acting as a basic inflation buffer for the schools? I mean, if administrators don't get at least a modest bump, how do they keep the lights on?
Sure.
Things get more expensive every single year.
Yeah.
Doesn't this just save everyone the time and money of running a political campaign for a basic cost of living increase?
That is precisely the argument for administrative convenience. The problem, according to the analysis, is the mathematical reality of compound interest.
Right, because it builds on itself.
Exactly. A 2% hike doesn't just add a flat fee every year, it compounds on top of the previous year's hike.
Yeah.
Over a 10-year period, a 2% annual compounding increase actually equates to a 21.9% total increase in the tax burden.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
The source gives us a tangible example to really ground this for you. Take a typical $378,000 home located in the Christina School District.
Okay.
Right now, that homeowner is paying $3,023 in school property taxes.
Okay.
Under SB 322, with that recurring autopilot increase, the bill rises to $3,685 after a decade.
Wow.
That is an extra $662 extracted directly from their pocket.
And we have to clarify what that $662 represents. That projection completely ignores broader inflation affecting the family. It ignores any other county or municipal tax hikes that might happen simultaneously.
Oh, absolutely.
It is purely the baseline school escalator kicking in year after year, regardless of the broader economic environment.
I always go back to the basic mechanics of how normal people pay their bills. I can't pay the county in drywall. I can't slice off a piece of my roof, hand it to the tax collector, and say, hey, here's the appreciated value of my asset.
No, you definitely can't.
Property taxes are paid from a household's monthly cash flow.
And that disconnect between asset wealth and liquid cash is a crucial element of Copeland's critique. When you implement an automatic compounding tax increase, it hits seniors living on fixed incomes who certainly aren't getting 2% annual bumps in their pensions.
Right.
It hits young families stretching to afford mortgages at higher interest rates. It really untethers the tax from the economic reality of the people paying it.
So if the state is demanding this automatic mechanism to cover rising costs and bypass the voters, the logical assumption any outside observer would make is that there must be an exploding student population.
You'd think so, yeah.
You'd assume schools are bursting at the seams, requiring a desperate influx of cash just to build new classrooms. So let's look at the actual unit count, the state's official enrollment data.
And the numbers from the Delaware Department of Education paint a very different picture than a state in the midst of a population boom.
They really do. From 2015 to 2025, the total annual enrollment in Delaware district schools grew by just 0.38%.
That's tiny.
To visualize that, we are talking about an average increase of only 34 new students per year spread across the entire state.
When the statewide population is essentially stagnant like that, authorizing an automatic statewide taxing mechanism seems structurally illogical.
But the analysis does point out that the statewide average masks some massive disparities, right? Like some districts genuinely are feeling the squeeze.
Yeah, that's true.
Over that same 10-year period, the Cape and Lopin district saw a 30.2% growth rate. Appoquinimink grew by 24.9%.
Yeah.
For administrators in those districts, the classrooms actually are crowded, and the need for volume-based funding is demonstrably real.
But the pendulum swings violently in the other direction as well.
Yeah, this is the part that demands an explanation. Other districts have seen undeniable collapses in enrollment. The Christina School District lost 17.7% of its students. Colonial went down 15.3%. Red Clay lost 10.9%. Wait, where did a fifth of the student body go in Christina?
It's wild to think about.
Are families packing up and moving out of state, or are we looking at a massive demographic shift toward charter and private schools?
It is a combination of demographic shifts, school choice, and charter expansion. But honestly, regardless of where the students went, the reality for the district administrators is that their footprint of responsibility is dramatically shrinking. They have fewer children to educate.
Which exposes the core flaw of one-size-fits-all legislation. If Christine is losing nearly a fifth of their students, why are they being handed a statewide mechanism for an automatic annual tax hike? Where's the money going?
That's exactly Copeland's argument. He says that tax increases should be strictly district-specific. If Cape Henlopen needs money to build a new wing, they should make that case based on actual enrollment numbers. But handing Christina an automatic 2% annual budget increase, while they are simultaneously losing almost 18% of their students, it completely removes any incentive to right-size their operations. It basically subsidizes empty desks.
But surely the legislative drafters foresaw the risk of districts just hoarding this autopilot cash, right? The bill does contain a specific safeguard meant to prevent endless accumulation.
It does, but the analysis suggests this safeguard might backfire and create a massive bureaucratic headache.
Oh, so?
It is a classic example of well-intentioned policy creating a perverse incentive.
Okay, well, the rule is this. Districts cannot use the 2% automatic tax hike if their operational reserve balance exceeds 10% of their annual revenue.
Right.
In plain English, if a school district has too much money sitting in savings, they are locked out of the autopilot system. They have to spend down their reserves before they can automatically tax the public again.
On its face, it sounds prudent, like use what you have before you ask for more. But the legal code for SB 322 fails to actually define the terms annual revenue or operational reserve.
Oh, wow. So does annual revenue mean total district revenue, including state and federal grants, or just local property tax revenue?
Exactly. And does operational reserve mean the strictly audited fund balance or a projected cash balance that administrators can manipulate?
I see. Depending on the accounting definition a district chooses, they can make their reserves look artificially low to ensure they keep qualifying for the tax hike.
Yeah. And beyond the accounting games, you have to look at the behavioral economics of the rule. What's fascinating here is when you tell a bureaucracy that they will lose a recurring source of revenue if they demonstrate fiscal restraint and save money, you incentivize the exact opposite behavior.
It's like telling a teenager they only get their weekly allowance if their piggy bank is empty. What are they going to do? They're going to spend their savings just to keep the free money rolling in. It's like corporate use it or lose it budgets. We've all heard stories about a department getting to December, realizing they have a surplus, and middle managers suddenly buying thousands of dollars of unnecessary office chairs and software licenses.
Right, because they aren't actually buying things they need, they are just
Burning cash, so their department's budget isn't slashed in the next fiscal year.
That is a perfect parallel. Penalizing reserve holdings incentivizes school districts to drain their savings accounts on unnecessary expenditures. Instead of looking for ways to run leaner or saving up for future capital projects, administrators are encouraged to burn through cash just to maintain their free taxing authority.
So if taxpayers are being forced to pay compound interest on their school taxes, and administrators are incentivized to spend every dime they have, the natural question any investor would ask is, what are the dividends? Let's look at the actual educational return on this investment.
And the shift from the mechanics of funding to the reality of the educational outcomes is pretty jarring.
It really is. Delaware's fiscal year 2026 budget allocates approximately 1/3 of the state's entire spending to K-12 education. It's an astronomical commitment of public resources.
Huge.
Yet the results detailed in the analysis are incredibly grim. According to the 2024 National Assessment of Educational Progress, that's SEDCENCO, the nation's report card, 40% of Delaware 8th graders scored below basic in reading.
Yeah.
Let that sink in. Not below proficient, below basic.
And the pipeline behind them isn't showing improvement. 45% of fourth graders scored below basic in reading.
Furthermore, a 2024 Urban Institute analysis, which demographically adjusted student performance to ensure fair state-to-state comparisons, ranked Delaware 48th in the nation in 8th grade math and reading.
So when you combine top-tier spending with bottom-tier results, the conversation inherently becomes about accountability.
Right. What stands out to you when you hear those numbers? We are talking about implementing an automatic escalator for costs, while the actual service being provided is ranking 48th out of 50.
Under the traditional system, the voter referendum was the ultimate feedback loop. It was the only lever the community had.
Yeah. If a district asked for a tax hike, voters could look at those NAEP scores and say, no, we are not giving you another dime until you show us a plan to fix the fact that nearly half our children cannot read at a basic level.
Right. And Copeland's stance is that by removing the referendum, SB 322 effectively rewards fiscal mismanagement. It legally severs the link between the funding a district receives and the quality of the education it provides.
Wow.
Bypassing the voters means providing additional taxing authority regardless of how severely a district is underperforming.
So if the old referendum system is viewed by lawmakers as too blunt or, too politically disruptive to long-term school planning, and this new autopilot system is fundamentally broken, what is the third way? How do you fund schools responsibly without disenfranchising the public?
Well, this is where Copeland proposes a completely different framework. He suggests replacing the entire concept of autopilot taxes with what he calls an accountability compact.
An accountability compact.
Okay. I mean, we require a prospectus before we invest in a mutual fund. We expect to see a company's performance history, their risk factors, and their strategic plan before we hand over our capital.
Exactly.
Yet under SB 322, we are legally barring taxpayers from demanding a performance plan before investing in their own local schools.
Right. So the accountability compact shifts the paradigm entirely. Funding growth isn't guaranteed by statute. It is contingent on publicly available, measurable outcomes. Before a district is allowed to use any kind of taxing authority, they have to prove they are delivering results on the metrics that actually matter.
The source outlines specific, hard data points that would be required. Third-grade reading improvement, for example. A district would have to publicly report their current proficiency levels, their 3-year historical trend, and their concrete targets for improvement.
Yes, and they have to show their 8th grade math trends and, importantly, detail their specific intervention plans for students falling behind. The compact doesn't just look at test scores, right? It requires operational transparency. Districts would have to report chronic absenteeism rates and their corrective strategies.
And there's also a laser focus on the administrative overhead. Before asking the community for more money, schools would have to report their central office spending, their administrative staffing ratios, and explicitly demonstrate cost containment strategies.
And perhaps the most crucial element of Copeland's proposal is who actually verifies this data. The compact requires publicly available efficiency audits conducted by the independently elected state auditor.
That's key. So we aren't relying on an internal district review where administrators essentially grade their own homework.
Right. This is an independent auditor examining procurement, transportation, energy costs, vendor contracts, and, program duplication.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the fundamental shift in philosophy here is profound. It transitions the taxpayer from an automatic ATM into a conditional investor.
So instead of taxes being granted by statute out of administrative convenience, they have to be earned through proven results.
Exactly. It acknowledges the economic reality of the community. Those families and seniors facing their own inflation shouldn't be forced to blindly fund a failing bureaucracy. Taxes have to be earned through proven results and radical transparency.
Let's pull all these threads together. We started by examining the mechanics of Delaware's SB 322, detailing how it replaces a protective reassessment cap with a compounding 2% automatic tax hike that bypasses voter approval.
And we explored the glaring disconnect of granting statewide taxing authority when districts like Christina are simultaneously losing nearly a fifth of their enrolled students.
Right. We analyzed the flawed 10% reserve loophole and how vaguely defined legal terms create a use it or lose it incentive for administrators to drain their savings simply to secure future tax hikes.
We confronted the staggering ROI of the current system, where a third of the state budget yields educational outcomes ranking 48th in the nation.
And finally, we looked at Charlie Copeland's alternative vision, an accountability compact that demands independent audits and measurable academic improvements before a single tax increase is authorized.
Ultimately, this debate over school funding is a collision between administrative convenience and the taxpayer's actual ability to pay. It's a question of whether public funding should be an automatic entitlement granted by the state or an investment earned through measurable success.
As we close out today's deep dive, I want to leave you with one final, broader implication to consider. We talked about how the referendum is the ultimate feedback loop. If automatic, performance-blind tax increases become the widely accepted legal norm for our public school systems, what stops this exact autopilot model from being applied to other local public services?
That's a great point.
If the state decides you no longer need to vote on school tax hikes, will the county commissioners eventually decide you no longer need to vote on tax hikes for the police department, or the fire department, or the municipal water system?
It sets a pretty significant precedent.
Could SB 322 be the first domino in fundamentally severing the financial relationship between taxpayers and their local government across the board? Keep that in mind the next time you look closely at your local tax bill. Until next time, keep diving deep.